Aloha and welcome to All About Adoption. My name is Christine Altwies and I'm the Executive Director at Hawaii International Child. Today I am delighted to share with you a very special guest, Kintaro Yonikura, who is a former foster child and a foster child advocate, a foster youth advocate now. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So as we were saying right before we started, I'm already afraid that we're not going to have enough time because there's so much that I want to hear from you and learn from you. So let's jump right in with who are you and how did you get to where you are now, and what can you share with us about your childhood?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in foster care. I entered the foster care system around the age of 4, and I aged out. So I was part of the system for 14 years. And then, of course, a little bit longer after that. I always needed the support. But I spent a lot of time in many different homes, resource caregiver homes. I did some time at Bobby Benson Center. I had a substance abuse problem, so I needed to be institutionalized. I went to DH for a little while, our detention home. I kind of did a little bit of everything. And then in the end, I ended up in a residential treatment center in Colorado, because I was just, it was for emotionally disturbed adolescents, because I had some serious stuff going on, that I needed to take care of, and I didn't know how. And I was just an angry little boy. Yeah.
And you became a professional advocate. You're not sitting here only because you care about this personally and you've done a lot of work personally, but you turned your life around to the point where you got an education, you became a professional child advocate.
Absolutely. So at 31, I decided to get my act together. And I wouldn't say decided. Things just happened and in my life, and it was the time for me to get my act together and stop playing that role of a foster child, right, that I would use to my advantage, because it was always, people want to take care of you, right? And with all good reasons and all good intentions. And I knew that. But it was time for me to grow up, right? It was time for me to take responsibility for my own actions, my own feelings, my own behaviors, and so I could let some of that stuff go, right? So that I could live a life. And absolutely, I was able, because of being in foster care, that got me scholarships, got me able to go back to school, right? I did the associates, then I did the bachelor's, and then I did the master's. And that was the most rewarding thing that I had ever done. Was one of the first things I ever completed, right? I'm great at starting things, but not finishing them. And that was because of the people that were in my life at that time and that had always been a part of my life, that believed in me until I could believe in myself.
Wow. And I mean, I love knowing you and hearing your story, because we see so many children in foster care. And this really has become an area of interest for us as an agency, and I hope, as a society, because there are lots of children who need families. There are infant children who need families. There are infants in orphanages around the world who need families. But here at home in Hawaii and across the U.S., I think the greatest need, at least from where I'm sitting, is hope for children who are in foster care. Because these are not the cases that jump up and attract positive attention. These are not the children for whom prospective families are lining up. These are not the children for whom people are willing to dig deep in their pockets and pay high adoption fees. These are children who are often, as you said, shuffled from home to home, from service to service, from caseworker to caseworker, and with each disruption, with each new situation, with each failed attempt, the child will, by necessity, because he's a human or she's a human being feeling these things, with each successive break and disruption, the child will likely suffer and manifest more negative behavior.
Absolutely.
And so the longer the child's in the system, most likely the tougher that child will be for someone to look at and say, oh, I want to bring you into my home and love you and believe in you.
Yes and no.
Okay,
right?
tell me how that works.
Our kids that want to be adopted, that are looking for permanency, That's exactly it. They want to be adopted. So regardless of all that stuff that's going on, we want to belong. We want to belong to someone that's not going to just give up, right? Because the foster care system is exactly that, right? It's temporary. It's not something that's long-term. It's not forever. It ends when you turn 18, although we have some new laws that have extended it to 21, which is voluntary, right? But it's eventually the system is going to not be a part of your life. But our kids want a family. They want to belong. They want to be with someone who's not going to give up on them and say, I've had enough, right? Please take this kid and I'm sorry, right?
So as someone who's worked in adoption, I know that, I believe that every child deep down inside wants and longs for a family of his or her own. But my question is, many children aren't able to express that. Many children who have had repeated disappointments start to become confused and frustrated and may exhibit behaviors that are challenging, even though deep down inside they want permanency more than anything. Is it possible that children aren't manifesting and presenting this, I want a family? You put the child in a family and the child runs away repeatedly. Or you put the child in a new home and the child burns something, or hurts the cat, or whatever these behaviors that parents often look at, or adults often look at and say, oh, that's the behavior of a child who's unsavable or who doesn't want his or her own family. What do we say to that? And how do we work with that? And how do we believe, in spite of that it is best to give this child permanency?
When our kids are moved over and over and over and over, the wall comes up. It's a protection, right? I'm going to protect myself from getting hurt over and over because the adults that are in my life are letting me down. And because I've been let down so much, I'm just going to hang in there until someone sticks it out. So yes, I keep running away, right? Because first of all, I want to do what I want to do, and I don't want nobody telling me, right? And that's what happens when we institutionalize our kids. We set them up to be in a system that I'm going to take care of myself. I don't want to belong. I have kids tell me that they want to be in shelters instead, right? And that breaks my heart, because for them to get to that point that they want rather be in a group home setting or a shelter instead of with the family, what have we done to them, right? And it's because there's so many rules in place. It's because of things like normalcy and prudent parenting that are now federal laws and state laws to help our kids to be more normal in comparison to their peers that they can experience. Because nothing about foster care is normal at all, nothing. But we want to make the situation as close to normal as possible. Have families that can make decisions for them, to be a part of, to be inclusive. Show them what love is, right? That it's unconditional. Yes, our kids suffer. That's the trauma that they've endured, right? They're in our system for a reason, right? Yes, but then we contribute to that by hurting them. And then we expect them to be okay, and that's not okay. They need a lot of love. They need a lot of support. They need a lot of social capital, a lot of people, right, to help carry them through. They need the right type of treatment, if that's what the case is, right? Because treatment's only going to be as successful as what they're getting in the home, right? Treatment isn't the answer for everything, but sometimes we need that direction, right? We need an outlet to get some of that emotions out, to understand what that is, because kids don't understand what that is. Why would they? And adults do, right? Because we've lived a little bit longer, our brain has developed a little bit. We've come to a place where we get that.
Right.
Kids are still developing, they don't understand that. And yet we treat them like adults, and they're supposed to because they're acting that way. But it's just an act, right? It's just a way to survive and to do and to get by. But deep down, they're still emotionally underdeveloped. They need to be developed, and we have to work to build them up, right? We need that hope, right? And we need to believe that our kids are just kids, and we need to give them a chance.
I think that's a really important thing to remember, because, even in a normal situation, a child nowadays is maybe looking and acting a lot older than he or she is developmentally or psychologically because of social media and independence and access to things. But I think it's a very important point you make that in spite of what a child may present, deep down inside and developmentally, children need parents and they need adults in their lives who are adults and who treat them as children with love and support, but who allow them to be children and treat them like children. Are you able to share with us anything from your own story? I'm thinking specifically about parents who might be watching this or prospective parents who might be watching this, because that is ultimately what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to share, I am trying to share your story with people who might be watching, because you are an inspiration. And I want people to see you and to realize that at any moment in your past, from the time you were 4 until the time you figured things out or decided that it was time, but before you did that, any snapshot of your childhood could have been a picture of a child that maybe wasn't desirable to a prospective family, who maybe looked like trouble, who maybe presented as so challenged that maybe, you could have looked like you were beyond hope to a prospective family.
That was me.
That was you.
That was me. And I was a very challenging child. And I tell you, it's because nobody listened to me, right? So I had these labels placed on me. He's the defiant one. He's going to therapy, so there's something wrong with him. I had all these things that were wrong with me, and why wouldn't there be things wrong with me? But when nobody's listening to you, then that's a problem, right? If nobody's going to listen to me, I'm going to do what I want then. I'm trying to tell you, I'm not angry just because I woke up that way. That was years of cultivating, right, over and over, and the frustration of not being able to say something. Then when I say something, it's not being believed, right? And it just was a cycle of abuse over again in its own form. But I just wanted somebody to listen. And our kids want people to listen. They're telling us all the time what they want, but we're not listening because we have our own preconceived ideas or our own limitations of what we can do for them, right? So we don't have the right supports in place maybe to support these kids. When I hear long-term placements and family, kids that were in the system and that now have their own family, right, that was chosen or selected and came together, their advocates were their family, right? They listened to them. They shared what was going on with the children. They fought for them. Right or wrong, it didn't matter. They fought for them. That's the point, right? They fought for them. And that showed to the child, well, they believe in me. Even though I may not be right, doesn't matter, right? But underlying all that is that we need to get support. We need to get this child, I'm going to show them my love, right? And I'm going to advocate for them, right? Now, there's to a certain extent. We have to do it the most strategic way as well. We have to be very thoughtful about that because we want to be heard, right? Instead of being the one that complains all the time, or that one's just trouble, or that one just, I'm guilty of that. I do that as well, and I have to be reminded that's not who people are.
But the child is a child. At the end of the day, even if they're acting like a belligerent adult, deep inside they're still a child. And as you said before, sometimes that scar tissue builds up over time, and the only way the child can express him or herself, because every adult has let him or her down repeatedly, is with anger. And that scares adults. When you come across a belligerent, angry teenager who keeps running away or keeps harming people, how do we as prospective parents say, no, this time I am going to be the adult who makes a difference, and this child and I are going to get through this, and I'm going to show with unconditional love that, I can be there for the child. Is it that simple?
If you think about it, if we're running away, that's a physical thing, right? I'm distancing myself from you. If I'm harming you, I'm hurting you, right, to keep you away. These are all things that are very negative, and that what is the opposite of that? That sounds like a lot of anger and stuff, right? But it sounds like love. Like, I need to be loving on you. So when you come back, of course you come back to my house, right? And I hug you, and I'm affectionate with you, right? I need to I don't know what that is. I can't say that I got that when I was growing up, right? And if it was, I didn't feel it. So when you know when people are genuine with you, and our kids are very intuitive. They come with an extra gift. They know when people are playing them. You know, they're not. They're very intelligent young beings, right? They have to be because they're surviving. And that's more love that we need to give to these kids. We need to be more affectionate. And, you know, we get worried, I know, with our resource caregivers, you know, I don't want to be any allegations or, you know, I don't want to cross boundaries. And what message are we sending to that child?
So physical affection, you're talking about hugging a child. Sometimes
Absolutely.
we have to be careful.
We have to be close.
Oh, okay.
But we're scared as resource families, right? Because we've planted in their mind, be careful of allegations. We want to protect you. We also want to protect our kids because we don't know what they're coming into your home with. There's a lot of undisclosed sex abuse that has gone on that isn't shared until they're comfortable with the person that they're with, the resource family that they're with. But it's beyond that, right? It's about that just basic love and affection that you give to somebody that you deeply care for, right? I mean, how do we expect them to not be angry or to not hit people if we're keeping them at a distance and they're keeping us at a distance? It just seems natural to me.
Yeah, when you talk about it, it makes so much sense. It sounds like a no-brainer, right? I mean, you love a child. You show the child that you love that child unconditionally. You show that child that you are going to be the different adult in his or her life. You're not going to be the one who's easily pushed away.
Right.
Can you recall a moment in your life, and you shared earlier that you kind of hit all the targets in terms of bad behavior, acting out, right? I mean, you really hit all the doozies.
Oh, yeah.
At any point along that path, could there have been someone who made a difference with something as simple as saying, Kintaro, tell me what you're thinking, what can I do to help you, what do you need from me? Or do you feel that you had to work these things out in the time that you worked them out?
So that's a difficult question. You know, as I look back and I think about my journey and I think about the challenges that I had, and I really did need that residential treatment that saved my life, really. I mean, you know, I had, you know, when we talk about doing drugs, you know, I was a 14-year-old that was shooting up cocaine that had overdosed. You know, I remember thinking that I'm not going to see my 18th birthday. That just wasn't my reality. For whatever reason, I just knew that just wasn't going to happen. You know, so I couldn't plan beyond that. What was the point? So I had a lot of things going on, and my social worker at the time had always been a part of my life. Still remains a part of my life today. And that relationship, as challenging as it was, because there was many differences, professionally, personally, morally, right? There was just many differences. Regardless, was still there. As much of a hard time as I received from him, I gave him a hard time too, you know? But I always checked in. You know, and I hear about our kids today, you know, when I hear that they're checking in with their worker, that makes me smile, because that means that they're connected, right? There's something. They care enough that they're going to check in with you. The ones that don't check in scare me because we don't know what's going on with them. I needed to go through the journey that I did. By the point that I had reached, I had just so much built up stuff because I had nobody to share that with. And it just escalated for me, You know, I didn't allow people to intervene, or even when I did, you know, my thing is who was going to believe me anyway, right? I didn't have that person that I could trust and that was going to listen.
Were any of the temporary homes you were in that were, I mean, so you were in some traditional homes with two parents or one parent and maybe a kid or two and maybe your own bedroom or shared bedroom, but you were in actual homes. Not to throw anyone under the bus, I'm sure there were a lot of people who had good intentions, maybe some who didn't have the support that they could have had or the training that they needed, or it concerns me that there were so many families along the way who let you down or who didn't somehow work out for you, were any of those families close to making it with you? In any of those homes, could you have, with a little bit of tweaking,
Yes.
found happiness?
Because one of
and-
those homes took me back in when I decided that, my journey needed to change at 31. She took me back into her home.
At
right?
31?
At 31. She took me back into her home, knowing that I'm homeless, I'm coming off the streets, I'm detoxing off drugs once again, and with no question took me back into her home while I got back on my feet. Yes, I mean, these families tried, but for me, I was at a different point in my life where I couldn't accept the help. With the substance abuse that had kicked in, that really pushed me over the edge, that really interfered with getting help, right, and allowing anybody to get in. And I needed to go through that journey, unfortunately. And so I get scared. I get scared when our kids are doing that because I know where that can lead. And not everybody ends up like me. I've been blessed with this new gift of life, right? I've been blessed to have a different journey for me now. And people always say, oh, it's such an inspiration and this, that. But the journey is not, for me, is not that, right? But if that's what I bring to you, then I'm happy because I hope that that fuels you and gives you hope and lets you touch somebody else's life because we don't know whose life we're going to touch.
No, and it's really important to never throw away a life. I feel
Never.
that with these children who need us more than ever, that to give up on them when someone like you could come out of it. Every child who struggles with drugs or juvenile detention homes or running away isn't going to end up homeless on the streets talking to himself, under a tree. There is hope for a lot of people, but as you said at the beginning, you have to have the support network. You can't do it alone. You've got to have people around you who believe in you, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what I hope someone in this audience will contribute to. I hope that people who
Yes.
see this will, say, I'm going to pick up the phone and see if I can be a resource family. I'm going to look on a website and see if there are children who I might feel connected to, who I can reach out and take in.
And I think the hard thing for us is that, we have to read about them on a paper, right? It's because of confidentiality, we can't show pictures. I mean, that makes a huge difference when you can see somebody and just say, I don't know what it is about them, but that look, that's the one. That's the one. Because we're doing somebody else's interpretation of them on a story. And not that that's bad, but it doesn't do justice to our kids because there's so much more than that. There's so much more than that. And when you make that connection, then that's when they become so much more than that.
That's a really good point, and that's something we struggle with in the industry, isn't it? That we have to protect these children because their stories are important,
Yes.
and it is a very personal thing that should be protected because most children who grow up in traditional families don't have their stories shared with millions of people, caseworkers across websites, whatever. Yet the quandary is, how do we make these children real? And like you said, reading a child's profile that may have been written by a stressed out caseworker who had to get it done by 3 o'clock
Right.
and chose words maybe slightly randomly,
Right.
yet this is what you have to go by. It
Right.
really requires a leap of faith.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I always suggest to our families that they get involved and volunteer. Get some hands-on interaction, right? Because I want you to get exposed to our kids because they're very special kids. They're not our average kids that you would see, right? Yes, because the trauma that they're enduring, they have to be treated in a certain way, right? The big term now is trauma-informed care.
Right.
What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, anybody that's experienced any kind of trauma that is similar in our kids are related to those that are in combat war veterans.
Right.
the-
PTSD.
Yep.
It is trauma, right?
And we have to treat them, right? We have to come at them, well, how would they act? We have to be sensitive to that, right? And yes, it takes a lot more work, but it's a life that we're talking about, a chance that every child should have to succeed and to sit here and be talking stories with you, to advocate for other kids, because they know, right? They've been in that situation. And not all kids are like me, right? They're not. And I know that I'm a very small percentage, and that breaks my heart too, because it should be the other way around.
There should be more survivors.
There should be.
You shouldn't be
There
such
should
a rare bird.
Right. And there are, right? And sometimes they just don't want anything to do with us anymore because of what we've done, right? And we have to, as a society, take ownership for these kids because they're our kids.
Yeah.
They're not somebody else's kids. They're our kids.
Society needs to pull together and see everyone as part of us and not of them. We are about to run out of time, which breaks my heart. One of the things that you and I had wanted to talk about today was inclusiveness and acceptance. And just sort of to end with the idea that when we take a child into our lives, we should have no expectations and we should be prepared to accept everything that child brings to us. And that crosses all boundaries, from whether the child brings a specific religious background, cultural, sexual orientation, unsure, whatever the child brings. To deny the child the right to explore that or discuss it, to not be supportive of any possible idea that the child brings, is to harm the child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to love on our kids, right? Isn't that what all kids go through? The exploration, and they have that family network that they can fall back on as they go through that journey, and people to guide them, right? We want them to have their experiences and not deny them or judge them or hurt them anymore. Right?
Yeah.
We want to be loving and protective.
Such a nice thought to end on, and I'm sorry we have to end. I wish we could talk all day. If anyone wants more information, please contact the Department of Human Services or Hawaii International Child. AdoptUSKids.org is another great website to go to look for children who are in need and who are seeking families of their own forever and ever. This has been all about adoption, and I am very grateful to my guest, Kentaro, who was here.
Thank you
So much. Thank you to Olelo Studios and our producer, Chris Castignero. This has been all about adoption. Until next time.